In this lesson, we'll take a look at 3D Pocket versus adaptive rest machining. After completing this lesson, you'll be able to analyze different approaches to machining complex geometry. For this lesson, we want to start by uploading the supplied file, Open Pocket versus Adaptive 3D Rest Machining. What we want to do now is we want to take a look at the differences between using a 3D Pocket for rest machining and then take a look at the 3D adaptive and the adaptive rest. When we took a look at this part in a previous lesson, we did compare the pocket operation versus the adaptive, and we saw some of the benefits to adaptive in a case like this. So now we want to explore the differences between using that pocket and pocket rest and using adaptive and adaptive rest. I have this file set up with very similar options in terms of how the rest machining is affected. For example, in each of these, the rest machining does not machine the bottom face. One of the benefits to using the adaptive toolpath is it can take a much deeper cut and then it can step back up the model to match geometry. So the main thing that we want to look at is how each of these is approached and how long it takes to actually machine the geometry. So first off, let's select Setup 1 and let's simulate it. I'm not going to play through each of these, but you can certainly feel free to do so. I'm going to go to the end so I can take a look at what the geometry looks like at the end. So you can see here, because we are avoiding machining the bottom face, there is a small lip here that's left behind, and there is some geometry that would need to be ultimately finished off. We have a little bit of material left on the overall part, so we understand that this is not the final shape by any means, but it is starting to drop into some of these pockets, and it is getting pretty close to what the final part looks like. Now if we take a look at the statistics, you can see that the machining distance is over 3,200 inches. So it's taking it about 2 hours to machine this, and it's got a lot of distance to cover for this toolpath. If we take a look at the secondary setup with adaptive in it, let's go ahead and simulate that. And again, we're going to jump to the end and not play through everything. We're going to take a look at what the final part looks like. So this final part looks very similar. Now we might see some differences in the resolution or the steps between heights, but overall they look very similar. If we take a look at the statistics, however, the machining distance, instead of being a little bit over 3,200 inches, is only a little bit over 550 inches. And the machining time, instead of being 2 hours, is 17.5 minutes. This is a drastic difference when it comes to actually machining this part. Would you rather program this part and sit there for 2 hours while it's roughing it, or for 17.5 minutes? So in the case of complex geometry, especially open 3D complex geometry, using something like a 3D Pocket toolpath can work, but you're going to have to do a lot of tweaking of the settings to even get close to anything that adaptive can do. And this is simply because the adaptive toolpaths and adaptive rest can take large cuts going down in the Z direction, and then it can take smaller step-up cuts getting closer to that final geometry. This adaptive nature in how it approaches step up and step down is a humongous benefit when it comes to removing material from complex geometry, but also keeping in mind that adaptive toolpaths in general will keep a consistent load on the tool rather than engaging a lot of material when you get into corners, such as the area between these two sections here. So hopefully this was very beneficial to you in understanding not only what rest machining is, but comparing some of the options we have when talking about 3D pockets versus 3D adaptive, and even some of our 2D adaptive and 2D rest machining options. From here, I suggest you take a look at all the files that we covered, you modify settings and you make changes so you can see how they're affected. And once again, make sure that you're always saving your files before you move on.